Hi, I'm your AFP membership co-chair. And how many folks here are members, current members of AFP? Yay, wonderful. So if you're like, this AFP thing, I'm not sure what you're talking about. There's lots of people at your table you can talk to. One of Sharon, where's Sharon? Sharon's going to share a few, why, you've been a member forever. Why are you a member, Sharon? You keep doing it over and over and over again.
I originally started because John Fatt, who was at the time, he was the head of St. Joseph's Hospital Foundation for many years, and then he was at Carolina Day School. Anyway, when I started officially fundraising in 2008, what a great time, right? He said to me, I called him and I said, what do I need to do? And he said, the very first thing you need to do is join AFP. And I said, what's that? I'd never even heard of it. So since then, I'll brief story short, my favorite things are the Palliative Institute, which we hold each July, and then in November, the National Philanthropy Day. So if you hear people talking about PI and NPD, that's the acronym. That's what we're talking about. The most wonderful times. You just think these lunches are great, getting to network, learn while you're networking, getting this gorgeous scenery. You just think that's fun. But go to PI and go to NPD in November, and it's fabulous. Just great group of people who are interested in helping, making a better place to live.
We have 3 new members this past month, 2 of whom are here today. Richard has already introduced himself, He's trading with North Carolina Stage Company. Thank you, welcome. And Amanda Cantrell with CarePartners. So welcome to our new folks. And for those of you who are like thinking about it, just know in a couple weeks, in May and June, there's a coupon that you can use. So when you become a new member, sorry, it's just for new people. For new members, you can use a coupon, and that one time you can get a discount. So if you're thinking about it, do it now. And if you do it now, when you register for the Philanthropy Institute in July, if you register as a member, you get $25 off. So you're getting like multiple, like racking up discounts right then. So who doesn't like a sale, basically? Like, so I get a good deal now. So thank you all for your support. And who's next? Mandy. That's right.
Okay. So we have a Beat Calls campaign for AFP, and we raise dollars to help support our local chapters of AFP International. If you haven't already received an email from me asking you to participate as a chapter member this year, you will be getting another one this week. We are currently at $500 towards our $1,600 goal for the chapter. So if you have a major gift, please do so. And if you have, thank you so much. So there you go.
Kim?
So are we going to roll right into the program?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, let me say just a couple of things about next month's program. We're going to be talking about capital campaigns, and that's a topic that is of interest to many people when you get thrust into the capital campaign. Sometimes because you want to do it, sometimes because your organization says just go forth and raise a lot of money. So I'm excited about doing this next month, but the twist on it next month is we've got a panel of folks who have worked on a capital campaign as volunteers. So we're kind of continuing this month's topic into next month because, quite frankly, if you're running a capital campaign and that's all on you, you can't do it. So we all rely on a very robust volunteers. So I think it'll be energizing and exciting. I would encourage you, after every luncheon program that you're at, you get an email saying, fill out the survey and tell us what you think. And not even half of us do that. And I say us because I'm not sure I do it every month either. But I do look at those survey results because as your program chairperson, it matters to me what you think. So because we want these to be meaningful programs, meaningful conversations with you. And often people have really good suggestions for other programs, so please take the time to take 3 minutes, not now, but take the time to do that. It's really good for us. So thank you for coming today, and I'm actually going to turn this over to Myra Grant, who is going to introduce today's speaker. And I will say that this is, I think next week, maybe is National Volunteer Recognition Week. If you haven't done so, thank your volunteers who work in your organization. And today's topic seems very timely. So, Myra, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the room who has never been a volunteer? Okay, don't raise your hand if you haven't. In our field, it should and does come naturally, being a volunteer, and it comes from the heart. So today we're going to learn a little bit more about that, coming from the heart, and how to work with volunteers and how to be a good volunteer. My almost lifetime experience with Kit Cosgrove goes back to when we were like 10 years old. But I first met Kit, I believe, when I was working with United Way of Asheville, and Kit took on the leadership role, those United Way people, of hurting loaned executives, not just once, but twice, and being a key leader in 2 campaigns for our community. Since then, she's always been a lifelong volunteer. Since then, in her work with several hospices across the country, and currently at the Hospice in McDowell, she also knows the value of being a volunteer, of using volunteers and how to recruit and reward them appropriately. Her most recent volunteer recognition is the Rotarian of the Year in Marion, after serving as their president of that Rotary Club. And those who are in Rotary know, and Civic Clubs know how much time and dedication that can take. So, welcome my friend, Ms. Kit Cosgrove. Thank you.
So, hello, fundraising professionals. It's good to be here, and it's nice to see that the fog is lifted. I think my colleague from Hickory, Cindy, and I drove up through the soup together in Black Mountain. You couldn't see really in front of your face, so it's nice to see it. I've actually brought props. I don't do PowerPoint. I'm not good at it. So, and Mark cannot see the PowerPoint, and me too. Myra did not tell me about the video. So I'm hoping he can airbrush. Some of you know that. But this is my prop. And it's upside down. I did that on purpose. This is my prop. Volunteers, a work of heart, because that's always true. And Kim's right. Next week is National Volunteer Week, and we picked this month because it seemed like an appropriate month. And what I would say to you is that you've all been volunteers. I started my job in hospice many, many years ago as the volunteer services manager. How many of you are volunteer services managers in addition to what you do as fundraising professionals? Raise it really big. Yes, absolutely. Because the first law of raising a dollar is what do you have to do? You have to relationship build, but you also have to ask, don't you? That's the first rule. You don't know if you don't ask. Well, I thought about it today. My belief is that my discretionary volunteer time is exactly like my discretionary dollars. Is that right, Mandy? If you don't ask me for my time, I'm probably not going to wake up this morning and say to you, I wonder what I'm going to do with those hours that I have available. So you've got to ask me for it. You know, Myra did that in December. I think we started talking about this program because Kim kind of asked Myra for some help, and as a volunteer would, she said yes, and then Myra called me, and as a volunteer would, I said yes. So you have some things, I brought props. So you have some things on your table because we wanted to give you something to take away. I don't have a website. This is not my job. I don't go out and give speeches very often. So I'm not going to give you my website, but I did give you my card. And these cards that we made so that you can take these back because volunteers have heart. But what I want to say to you this morning or this afternoon is there are 15 most important words, most powerful words that I want to talk to you about today as far as volunteers are concerned. And I'm going to do them in a system of first 5, then 4, then 3, then 2, and then 1. Most powerful words that we can use with volunteers and really with anybody. So the first 5 are, I am proud of you. Why would that be important? Because none of us get that enough, do we? And when we get it, it feels really, really good. And when people come to volunteer with us, it's really important to stroke them because gratitude really has no place if it's silent. It doesn't do any good for anybody. So those are the first 5 powerful words that I'd like you to take away today. The second 4 are, what is your opinion? Or what do you think about that? You don't have to do anything with that information, but it conveys your interest in gathering information as to what other people might bring to the table. So the next 4 are either what is your opinion or what do you think about? What do you think? The 3, will you please? That seems to get lost in today's accelerated digital world that we live in. Email, we don't start with will you please. We oftentimes lose our ability to be very polite and inviting. The second 2, number 2 words, what do you think they are?
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we say that enough? And then the first word, the most powerful word in the English language. I didn't hear. Please? No? Yes? The answer is yes? No? Huh?
Love.
Love? I would say it's Richard, or it's Mandy, or it's Bill, or it's Myra. Why is that?
Because it's all about them.
Because it's all about
Or it
them.
ought to be.
It ought to be about them. So when I go to a grocery store, the first thing I do is scan the name tag so that I'm able to speak directly to that server and let them know that what they're doing is important for me because they're taking care of me and I want to say thank you to them. So those are the order of most powerful words. Now, I grew up in a home in New Jersey, Bill. I told you I was going to bring us back to that. Bill and I grew up in New Jersey, not together. I'm several decades older than Bill. I probably came to North Carolina sooner. I grew up in a little place that was called a bedroom community to New York City. And my mom had 7 dirtiest words of the English language. You know what they were? Do it yourself. Root canal. Martini. And car. Now the reason Martini was in there was because when my dad did not drive to New York City where he worked, he often took the bar car and had a martini on the way home. My reframe of that was perhaps she needed to have the martini before she had the root canal. And then she could really do it herself and not worry about driving. Words are important, and how we engage people is really part of the process. And so what I would say to you, anecdotally for the last many years, probably the last 10, I've been thinking that volunteerism has gone down a little bit. The rest of you feel that that has happened, that it's harder to recruit volunteers to get engaged in your programs? Well, I was going to talk to you about that, and then I decided to do some research, and in fact, around 2009, prior to then, about 50% of American households volunteered either in their churches or in their communities or with their PTAs and in their schools, so in their government programs. And in fact, around 2009, when the Bureau of Labor Statistics came out, they said it's down about 25%. That's pretty significant, especially as budget cuts come and we are looking more and more at what happens locally to people. When the budget goes down, does your client population go down?
No.
What happens to your, it usually goes up.
It generally goes up. That's the problem from a public policy standpoint.
Exactly. And when you want to push it down to the local level, you need to also push some dollars there, but that's
That
not
doesn't
happening.
happen.
That's what should happen.
Well, yes.
That's what should happen. So in fact, we're living in a world today that we need more volunteers than we ever did. And I'm not talking about volunteers that answer the telephone and make copies. Oftentimes people think about volunteerism as making copies, doing different kinds of chores. And so what I would throw out to you is something that Peter Brinkerhoff talks about in his mission-driven not-for-profit book, his most recent, and that's that we're talking about unpaid professionals. And in fact, in the hospice world, as Kelly would know, in the hospice world, 5% of our patient care actually has to be served by volunteers. That goes into the cost report that we turn into Medicare every year. And when the founding mothers and fathers of the hospice Medicare benefit came into play, they decided what was a grassroots operation needed to be able to celebrate those roots. And so they crafted that 5% rule. Now, I don't know anybody that's ever been dinged on that, but I think it's significant that we do every year have to add that to our cost report and let people know. So we really work hard, and it's hard to get volunteers to come into our programs. And I suspect that it's easier for us when we have inpatient facilities, because that's a safer place to be. I'm speculating here, and I think this is also more anecdotal. I live in a rural community, McDowell, and we have just a home care program, and we have found it harder and harder to be able to recruit people to go into other people's homes. And I suspect that has to do a little bit with some of the fear that we're hearing about a lot. So we're trying to be creative, but one of the things in the federal regulations about hospice is it speaks very candidly about the fact that volunteers are unpaid staff. So the danger, or probably the challenge or the balance is, how do you treat an unpaid staff who are doing roles in your organization much the same as paid staff is, but you can't hold them to the same human resource model because you're not incentivizing them with money, and that's always a challenge. And then you have the possibility that you fundraising, development people, and they don't want you to spend the hard-earned money on trinkets to give out to incentivize them. So you have to be figuring out ways that, one, you can incentivize on a truly big way all the time, so that you're not doing little things that they might not like. But the other piece of it is, don't you have to ask the volunteer what it is that's important to them? So what's important to Richard may not be important to Bill. And what's important to somebody else might not be important to somebody else, which makes it even more important because you have to kind of know your volunteers. So I would say to you, and your name, I'm sorry I didn't get to talk to you. Ashley. As a volunteer services manager, do you interview your volunteers?
Yes.
And you get a sense of who they are? Is one of your questions about if you're having a bad day or if something's going well or something's not going well, how does it make you feel? What are the things that make you feel good about what you're doing? Never asked that
I
question.
do ask about hobbies and what they do in their free time, but not a specific question.
So, and that's good because it's important because you're getting to know them as an individual. On your table also is my business card. Part of it is because I'm going to ask you to do some exercise with me so you'll have a piece of paper to write on and you'll always forever know that Kit taught you that. But also because those are nice little notes that I send in personal handwriting to people. And one of my staff members said, oh no, they probably don't know how to read it because your handwriting's not always legible. So I have the blocks so that I can do some printing. Since my cursive is, I'm told, very attractive, but not easily read. And so I use those little cards because the art of writing is oftentimes not utilized anymore. And it does take a little bit of time, but I also, that lets it come from me. So I'm giving you that card, and I would ask you, do you have a pen? Did you bring a pen with you today? Do you need a pen? I've got plenty of pens. Came prepared. I'd like you to take out a pen, and I'd like you to listen to me and think about what I'm saying. Bed, slumber, rest, snooze, pillow, sheet, mattress, snore, dream. Write down what I just said, as many of those words as you can. If you will, please.
Is this a long-term care insurance exam again?
Yes. Did anyone get all 8 of those words?
Oh, stop.
Oh, stop, it's too soon, I'm sorry. You're right, 9. I wrote that too many. Did anybody get all 9 of them? 9. You did? How many got bed? That's really great. That doesn't always happen in a crowd. How many of you got all 9 of them? Okay.
But I cheated. I was writing them down as you were. I didn't hear you say wait.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Because some of us listen very well when we write things down, right? It's not always adaptive learning. How many of you got the word dream? You guys are really, really good. How many of you got the word sleep? I never said sleep. You're right. Sleep. I said slumber, but I didn't say sleep. And so what that exercise was hopefully engaging you to think about is sometimes we all have these mysterious filters that you didn't really know what I was going to go at, so you were thinking ahead of me, perhaps, and trying to anticipate. And if you're at home with your wife or your children, those mysterious filters often come up a lot when you say, I didn't say that. Did I? I didn't say that. So the question becomes, when you're working with volunteers, is how important it is to check in with them to make sure that they understood the question. Because you know what? We delegate a lot of responsibility to these folks. None of us wants to look stupid. And sometimes as the boss, we say, do you understand, Tony? And you don't want to look stupid, do you? So you say, yeah, I understand. So it's really important to make sure that you're checking back with them. It's kind of a return demonstration, if you will, especially when I'm looking at you and I'm not sure that you really got it. So I'm going to ask you, did you tell me what you just heard me say, actually? No. Okay. I'm
taking notes.
I know you're taking notes. That's not always adaptive. So sometimes it's really important to talk to people and listen to what it is that you're saying and ask them to return demonstrate or ask them to give you information. And sometimes it's important to take the time to really clearly identify what tasks you want. Again, Peter Brinkerhoff talks about the coming age of volunteers being those volunteers that are actually professional. My early hospice career, we actually had licensed nurses and physicians and chaplains and social workers who provided time with us before we became a professional organization. The great thing about volunteers is they are wonderful to work with, and the best part about volunteering is I get to say, no, I'm going on vacation. Or I don't feel like that today, right? Mm-hmm. And we say thank you, and we'll call you again the next time. And some of us who run organizations that have to be on target 24/7 find that you have to have staff that are going to be willing to carry the beeper, or I'm dating myself, the iPhone now, so that we can deliver our services. And many people will say, but my program requires so many licensures and certifications and regulated industry that I can't really use professional volunteers. And I would suggest to you that firefighters, 70% of them are volunteers. 70% are also EMTs who go through the training and have lots of regulations. And Doctors Without Borders comes to mind also. Huge volunteer presence with professional people. So I think that the coming years, we're going to be looking at more professional people as we retire. And the other challenge that we have is that we have the privilege and sometimes the burden of passing volunteers through 4 generations. We've got the silent generation, my mom's generation, who, by the way, was Mrs. Volunteer in my lifetime. We have the baby boomers. We have the Gen Xers, and we have the Gen Ys all coming together, and we all have different ways, and sometimes those cultures clash with one another, and it's our job to stay ahead of it. So I would suggest to you that one of the things that's really helpful with volunteers is actually to know them, and I'm just picking on you because you're right here, to know them, to do a really special get to visit with them orientation and get to know who they are so that you can find out how you can appreciate them. But more than that, I think people who are in volunteer services management positions, notice I didn't say coordinating positions because you don't coordinate the volunteers, you coordinate their service, right? The best part is finding out what's motivating them today to show up and knowing them well enough to know that when that need is met, you're going to have something else to give to them so that you can extend that beyond 3 to 6 months into a more long-term fashion. I will close with you today to tell you that my mom exposed me to volunteering when I was very young. She was the volunteer person for the Visiting Nurses Association of Somerset County in New Jersey, and that is currently raising money for the hospice and palliative care there. So I was involved with hospice and palliative care without knowing it when I was young. My mom was widowed when she was 42, and she had 4 children. We were all teenagers or tweenagers, right in that middle place. And the way she was able to stay at home so that she was there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when we got home from school was to work with the Visiting Nurses Association, and we had rummage coming to us all year round. We were a rummage drop-off. And we got to go through that rummage first and pick out the things that we liked, and we paid 25% above what the market was, so that for the privilege of the first thing. And that's how she clothed us as we were growing up. She ended up working with that organization for 45 years. It's well into its 100th year. I will tell you that that mega rummage sale is the biggest one in New Jersey. It's done every year between the first weekend in May and the first weekend in October, and they raise in a weekend anywhere from $350,000 to $450,000. So that's close to $1 million that they raise for that program every year, but it's been going for 100 years. I would tell you that part of what happened in that volunteer group was they came together every year, and even when my mom moved to North Carolina in 1985, she went up to New Jersey every May and every October so she could be with her people, work the rummage sale, and even the month of May in 2002, when she was dying of lung cancer, she made her last journey to New Jersey for the May sale. It was her last sale, and it was her willingness to go that she wanted to say goodbye to all of her friends. My request of her was, could I take her? And she said, you've never taken me before. I would also tell you that before she died, she replaced herself with 2 volunteers that happened to take up her slack at the thrift shop in the Emmanuel thrift shop in Southern Pines. And so what I would tell you is the sooner we get volunteers started, the sooner we get them as adults. So anything you can do to get families involved, young people involved, getting things done through community and organization of that pattern helps to keep the volunteerism alive. Thanks for whatever you do in our communities. I once was told that it can't happen without the sun, and it can't happen without the rain. It can't happen without the laughter, and it sure cannot happen without all the pain, because it takes all of the sun and all of the rain and all of the laughter and, yes, all of the pain to make rainbows. And because of what you do here every day, you're making rainbows where you are. So thanks for what you do, and thank a volunteer on your way out.
We still have a few minutes. And
Sure,
since
okay.
we have Kit with us, does anybody have a specific question or a scenario or a situation that you've encountered working with volunteers that we could call upon our expert here for some insight?
Oh, I'm not an expert. Richard's an expert.
Oh.
That got me off the hook early.
I see. I mean, come on, y'all work with volunteers. Has anybody had a particularly challenging? Sure.
Just a question, how do you engage younger folks? In the social services, it makes a lot of sense to me. When you're talking about the arts, where there is zero funding and increasingly less funding from the NEA down, how do you think might be some good ways to approach young people and families to be involved in the arts?
Well, I'm in healthcare, and I would say it's not just arts. I think we probably all resonate with that question. So how do we engage young people? It's hard.
Well, I think part of the way you engage younger people is to have their folks snared as well, so that they can do it together. So because families don't have a lot of time to spend with one another anyway. And we tend to not have a whole lot of structure for those young people. So then you've got to have some mechanism to structure them. I know that our Arts Council down in McDowell County inspires young people to participate with them through their trainings and their development and their coloring and their painting and all of those kinds of things, in hopes that by engaging them in those kinds of activities, they'll grow up to, as they're teenagers, be able to give back and start processing. The literature suggests that the younger you start people in volunteering, the more likely they are as adults to volunteer. So I don't have a good answer, Richard, except to try to figure out what you've got to engage them.
I run the Young Professionals Group of United Way, and so I work with a lot of millennials. And I would say that younger folks, we're talking young adults, they want a system they can very easily plug into. They don't want to have to figure it out for themselves. So you got to serve it up on a platter and make it really easy for them to plug in when they want to.
And I would say in follow-up to what you're saying is, you know, we really do live in the world of acceleration as far as the age of acceleration in digital technology. It's not going to go away. Everybody needs to have a really wonderful website that has a lot of bells and whistles for volunteers. And one of the ways you engage your young people, the millenniums especially, is you ask them to help you with that. And then you can kind of get them engaged with those projects as well. They like time limitation too.
Just want to add, this Friday is the Asheville Area Arts Council Conference. It's Friday, so if anybody's interested, come check it out and see what the arts are doing or trying to do, how they impact on our community, health, financially, spiritually, physically, and mentally. So if you don't know about it, doesn't matter what area you're in, arts matter. Rhymes with heart. Throwing it out.
I just wanted to throw out there that Sarah and I are actually the staff of Hands on Asheville Welcome, which is the volunteer center at United Way. So if you need volunteers, please connect with us because we actually operate a website that already does all this stuff. We engage families, we engage, we're working on skills-based, but we have other stuff, we're engaging companies, etc. So please connect with us because we want to help you recruit volunteers.
So that's true in Henderson County too.
Yeah,
That you
just
can
launched
register your organization on their website and they'll help you recruit. For
I don't think you can start the interest too soon. My guardian ad litem child, for example, learned about your organization because his guidance counselor and his art teacher, and his music teacher all recognized that he had this interest in theater, music, art combination. He was very talented, and we had a volunteer that said, "Oh, well, you need to be in touch with," and I can't remember who it came from, but that connection was made on a dime, and this child now is serving as usher and backstage set design as he's in high school. He's learning. He's not contributing yet. He's not a tax-paying citizen yet. But the point is, we started earlier, and he's going to be connected in the future because of his involvement. You all opening the doors to allow a child that young to connect and volunteer. So thank you for that.
I would also suggest to you that in the age of acceleration, you know, when it was my time to go looking for a job, I went and found a job. In tomorrow's world, kids are going to have to find a job. They're going to have to create their job. They're going to end up being very entrepreneurial. So volunteerism looks really great on a resume too. That's where they get their skill set, if you're willing to teach.
Alex.
Kent, one of the things you've done today for us is to beautifully showcase the power of being positive power of having a really good voice. The way that you project is very helpful as we watched your presentation. Being a positive person is a wonderful thing. We all try and do that. Some, like myself, don't succeed terribly well. But therefore, I will say, and Kit, what do you have to tell us about that wonderful soul who can ruin everything he or she touches? And we have to fire
And we all have the opportunity to meet them. I like helping people grow in other gardens when it's necessary.
There is also the shifting from dealing with a lot of people to dealing with holding your red stapler in your own office and dealing something where you don't deal with people. Everybody has a talent. Some open up people to your cause. Others drive them away. So you have that office as you help them on to their next stage in life, wherever that may be. But not here.
But I think, to answer your question, everybody has strengths. There's at least 9 strength groups that all of us have, and it's about finding what their strengths are and figuring out how you can show gratitude for their strengths and not put them in a job that they can't do or understand.
Or
Because
don't like.
Or don't like.
I've been there before, and I'm like, but this is not what I want to do.
No.
I want to help you, but not in this area. And it's awkward for the volunteer when they make you do a certain thing, and you're just like, okay, I'm not volunteering here again.
And the question is, make them do what they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Because that's what your night needs.
It's not pleasant.
mine.
Yeah.
But there are, let's be honest, there are occasions when you really do have to thank and bless and release somebody to move on to something else.
Right.
It just does not, I mean,
So they go to the cause.
we had a mess at our hospital right after I got there because the volunteer department fired a volunteer who was a major donor. And I had no idea who this person, what was going on. And he came stomping into our office, furious. And so it's taken 4 years to kind of cultivate and calm him down and get that back on track again. So those are tricky situations. They were right to suggest that it wasn't his time anymore to be a volunteer. But the way they went about it, and it's to your point about, are we dealing with volunteers who are philanthropic of heart and time, or are we dealing with a professional, unpaid professional in the workplace? And I think that's a tricky balance, because an unpaid professional in the workplace, you can fire, I guess. Wants to be a professional, but a true volunteer, one of these, this guy was 90 years old and couldn't handle telephones and couldn't, and it was hard. It was hard on him.
Doesn't that go back to what you were talking about, is getting to know, like the more you know and build a relationship with that volunteer, the more you can understand their motive. So if they're getting out of it what they anticipated, but let's say that they've turned sour or they've had a negative experience and they're spreading that, they're really getting cheated out of that experience that they're looking for, and helping to convince them, raw salespeople, right? Helping to convince them that they're not operating in their best place where they're going to get the most reward, and trying to help them find what is that place where you're going to get the most reward. And the better relationship you have with that volunteer, the easier that conversation is.
I've just got to say, and this is the way we all need to be with all our social work people here today. I'm just going to throw out a definition called borderline personality disorder, which I think we all ought to know about, because when we have a volunteer who's a borderline, it ain't going to work. And we need to know that.
Absolutely.
So, with the kind of like volunteer task management stuff, oftentimes we'll have a scenario where we've got a 24 or 25-year-old staff member or like intern, somebody that's much younger, who is managing a team of volunteers that are much older. And like, I grew up in the deep South, so the like respect for elders, all that stuff, all those intergenerational issues come up. So do you have any tips for younger folks managing older professionals in a volunteer setting where they're getting the tasks done that need to get done and they're managing that day or that event, but they're also showing the due respect to people that are donors, people that are older, people that have a lot more experience than these 24, 25-year-old kids do?
Could I give an example? As a very young second lieutenant, I was assigned to an infantry battalion, and all the people there were older than I was, except my most junior troopies. And what I found was acknowledging their experience, their knowledge, etc. And with my platoon sergeant, I said in so many words, in a private conversation, I'm as green as the uniform I'm wearing. You've had more time in the chow line than I've had in the whole Army. But we have different jobs and different responsibilities. And that I found that charting out those boundaries early on helped tremendously.
One word, psychographics. Psychographics is a delineation from one generation to another, and if you think about it, you don't even have to look it up. Your values were based upon what you experienced in history during the time you were 10 and 20 years of age, versus your former 40 years. And psychographics tell you what happened during your lifetime when you were 10 to 20 is formulating your values, morals, ethics, and so forth. So that answers that question, I think, fairly well. The other thing I would say back about the volunteers, however small your organization is, if you don't have a volunteer profile for a volunteer to fill out, that should be your first line of defense, and also I should say your active motivation to get them in the right seat on the bus, to use an old Steve Covey. Anyway, if you find out on the survey, you should have a sentence that says, why am I volunteering for this organization? And so the compelling reason they're going to tell you, but they're also going to check several boxes to say what I'm interested in. Doesn't mean that's what their attitudes are in. It says what their interests are. But then I think you have to have an individual interview with each of them to say not only what do you like, but so what have you done during your lifetime? What other volunteer organizations have you been a part of? What's been your success? How can we motivate you? Get them the right way. And the other thing is that trying to get them out of the position that you got back to the negative kind of side of this. You need to promote, we always say promote them out, but you've got to have a better position for them to go to so that they feel like, oh, you want me for this big position. Well, you're the only person that can feel that. We look at all of our surveys, and we're like, skill set. You know, we got all the people that are already doing what you're doing, and we can replace you there. If we can replace you in this one, would you consider doing this for us? It'd be a big gift for us. Sure, I'll do that. And they end up, because they're so good at it, they end up liking that more than they're coming back to you to thank you for helping do the triage and push them out.
So Zig Ziglar says, I still listen to him, by the way. Zig Ziglar still says on everybody that's talking about him, if you help, you can have anything in your life if you help enough other people get what they want in theirs. And so, speaking to your military experience, oftentimes some of the recruits tell me that when they're dealing with older people, they go back to what moms do with children and they give choice. And so the last thing I will say to you today, in defense of Ashley and all of the rest of you who are doing multiple jobs, including volunteer services, just like development and fundraising is everybody's responsibility, as is marketing everybody's responsibility, the volunteer services manager is the human resource manager. They deliver you your supervisees to help you accomplish whatever you're trying to do. So you all are volunteer services managers in your organization. Thanks for that.
On that note, thank you.